So hopefully you're not too full after first service if you were here in first service, because I have even more for you. So, and if you are here in first service, good, because you're going to get full right now. And I'm excited the word that God has for us this morning. But if some of you know me, you know I like crowd participation. So today we're going to do a little crowd participation. Did someone just clap? Oh, good. So let's just start right here. Raise your hand if you had dinner last night. A soda? That sounds really healthy. Soda. Oh, I thought you said a soda. I was like, man, oh man, we gotta get a nutritionist in here. That's our next one. All right. Raise your hand if you woke up this morning and brought yourself here. That should be everyone. All right, so now we have our hands in motion. Let's get our words in motion. So God is good, and all the time. Good. So here's what I want today, because I need a little bit of encouragement up here this morning. I know God gives me plenty of encouragement, and my wife kicks my butt a lot of times. I'd like to hear encouragement from you guys as well. So if God is speaking to you this morning, whether it's just something that I said that He brought to my attention, or He's speaking to you right now, I just want you to just say amen, nod your head, or something, so I can at least see that God is speaking to you through this service, and you're not falling asleep, or you're doodling, or you're scrolling through social media. Because one of the pastor's best friends is watching people scroll through social media as they preach. Okay, I got a couple kids. So, as you can see, we're in week 2 of this conversation called Go and Make Disciples. And last week we had the opportunity to discover, or in a lot of cases, rediscover living faith. In order for us to live out our faith accordingly, we drew quite, hopefully, closer to God, and to take those next steps where we can actually walk by faith and allow God to use us in a big way. This week we get an opportunity to discuss discovering ourselves, or if we want to keep with the same theme, rediscovering ourselves. And I kind of want to share with you a neat experience that we had. As some of you guys know, we're praying and we're hoping that we get an opportunity to plant a campus church a little bit down the road. And hopefully it's within our community. We've been praying really hard, and we continue to believe that God has put us in our community for a reason, in order to plant another church. And plant a campus church, which is just a sister church of this one right here. But in order for me to be able to preach this conversation, don't I have to live it out? So for me, one, I want to hear from you. If you have a story or a conversation that you've had in the week, email me, text me, call me. I want to hear about it. Because one, it's encouraging to hear that we're actually getting out and talking to people about God. But I wanted to kind of go back to last Sunday, and God's really convicting us to reach our neighborhood. So we're kind of new to the neighborhood. We're only about 5 months into living in this community. And what better way to meet your neighbors than to bring them sweets? And amen, yes. And if you want to get a hold of me, brownies and cheesecake are really good in my heart and my stomach. So, all right. Man, I'm feeling epically this morning. But God has a good way about providing things that ultimately we need and we feel that He's using us for. Last week, we decided we were going to go purchase a bunch of cookies and just start baking them and share them with the neighbors and kind of introduce ourselves to our community. What's funny, though, is at our 4 o'clock service, Bradley came and got me and said a man was here for a delivery. I'm like, what are you delivering, bro? It's 4 o'clock. We're having service. What is the deal? Well, one of the cool things is through one of the partnerships that we're working with, he brought us 5 ginormous boxes of chocolate chunk cookie dough. We were baking cookies to hand out to our neighbors. We were going to purchase out of our own pocket, but yet God blessed us with this huge box of cookies. So we went home that night and my wife and my kids baked. Give you credit where it's due. So, yes, I can cook, and I can cook every once in a while. But they went home and they baked cookies, and we ended up going out into the neighborhood and being able to talk with a couple families. We had visions of talking with 4 families. As time got away from us, we only were able to talk with 2. And I kind of want to pinpoint those 2 families and give you a little bit of encouragement, at least coming from my end. 2 families we were able to speak with. The first one we kind of met before, but we haven't really truly met, and we've talked on a here and there basis, like a passing by. And we went to her door and knocked, and we ended up talking about 15 minutes with her. And she knew us a little bit. She knew the boys went to school, and she saw us every morning go and get up very early and bring them to school. And we just started building that relationship with her. One of the cool things I really took from our conversation was a question that she ultimately asked us. She asked us, have you met this and this person yet? And what's cool about that is when you start meeting people, when you start building genuine relationships with people, they want to share you with their friends. They want to, hey, have you met this person? Have you met that person? And it's like a domino effect. If you are vulnerable enough to go and meet new people that you've never met before and talk to them just to start building relationships with them, they're going to ultimately bring you to someone else. So we found that conversation very productive and a good step in the right direction. Yes. And in the second home we went to, we met this new family. They moved in about 1.5 years ago, and we met. We have a couple things in. What's the right word I want to use? In common, yes. They basically restored their home. They stripped it to the studs and redid their home. Kind of something close, not close, but we remodeled our home. We stripped a little bit down and made our home kind of our home. But we went in, and in my mind, we still had 2 families to get to, and it was getting late. And I'm thinking, oh man, we're only going to spend maybe 5 or 10 minutes here. A half an hour later, we brought them a bag of cookies, and half an hour later, we're still talking about family. And they spoke a little bit of English. They understood what we were trying to say, and we understood what they were trying to say. But God put us there for a half an hour to kind of plant the seed within this family. They ended up talking about their family who lived 15 minutes down the road and then having a couple grandkids similar to our kids' age. So we built started to build that relationship with them. Here's what's funny. We brought them cookies. They ended up giving us 2 chocolate bars, 4 miniature chocolate pieces like you would hand out in Halloween, and 2 new toy cars before we left. We didn't want anything. We weren't expecting anything. But because someone reached out to them and made them feel like they were important and wanted to build a relationship with them, they were more than willing to open up their home to us. So I want to keep encouraging you guys to get out of your own way and start building those relationships with people who don't know Christ or who may have fallen off with Christ. This week we're going to discover ourselves a little bit. And if you have your Bibles, I want to encourage you to turn to John chapter 4. And We're going to go basically through the whole chapter. No, I'm not going to have you stand up and we're going to read every verse within chapter 4, because we would be here until 12 o'clock. And knowing everyone, we have a schedule and we want to get out of here at 12 o'clock. So I'm trying to keep that schedule as best as possible. And everyone who wanted to go to lunch said, Amen. All right, there's 2 of you who are getting hungry. But we're going to focus on Jesus and this Samaritan woman at the well. And today, I know originally our plan was to have 8 points. I condensed it to 5 because I believe some of the points were kind of similar, number 1, when going through my study. But 2, there's a lot of meat in these points that I believe God fed me. And I'm hoping that I can relay His word to you this morning. The first point I kind of want to open up with, and the first question is embracing all. And the question that we need to ask ourselves personally is, do I embrace all people regardless of their race, economic, or social status, or maybe their background? And when we go through John chapter 4, and Jesus is at the well with this woman, we see in verse 9 something that really pinpoints this point of embracing all. In verse 9, the Samaritan woman said to him, "You are a Jew and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink?" And then you see in the parentheses, "For Jews do not associate with Samaritans." And we can be here until 4 o'clock if we wanted to do an in-depth study of why Jews and Samaritans didn't get along, because there's many, many, many issues previous to this point. But the point of the matter is, she recognized that she was a Samaritan woman. He was a Jew. She was out in the middle of the day when it was blazing hot. No one was out. She wanted to be by herself, but yet she sees this man. She has no idea that this man is the Savior. This man was Jesus. She had absolutely no idea. And then when I go through this verse, there's another verse in the Bible that really jumps out at me, and it's in what Paul tells the church of Galatia in Galatians chapter 3. And I want to say it's close to verse 9 or verse 10. But he tells us that there is neither Jew nor Gentile, neither slave nor free, nor is there male and female, for you all are one in Christ Jesus. And when I read this point, and as I read this verse as well, I realize that not only did God embrace diversity, He created it. He created diversity. In the beginning, He created man and woman. He created different races. And I know it's a touchy subject, but the truth of the matter is, God created it. He created it in His master plan to bring everyone together as one. No matter where you are in life, what title that you may have, whether how much money that you have, it doesn't matter to God. It does not matter to Him at all. He was at the well for one reason: to bridge the gap of diversity that we have in our economy. He wanted to bridge this gap. He wanted to show us that it's okay to be different, and the same people, or not the same, it's okay to be different. Let me reword this. I'm going so fast. It's okay to be different and come to this building of worship and be different, because we're praising the one true God. God created diversity. John chapter 17, verse 23, Jesus says, "I in them, and you in me, so that they may be brought to complete," what is that word? Unity. "Then the world will know that you sent me and have loved them even as you have loved me." This is one of the last prayers that is recorded by Jesus. And what is He calling for? He's calling for complete unity. I don't know if if you stepped outside the walls recently or have heard about the news, but we live in a broken and diverse world where diversity separates us. And it's a very dangerous line when we talk about diversity, because people want to use diversity as a crutch. And it's to the point where we use diversity where it's acceptable to sin. When in fact, Jesus himself, one of his very last prayers, he's looking to bring everyone together for one purpose: complete unity in him. When we magnify every difference and treat it as sacred, selfishness rules, and becoming one is sacrificed in favor of individual preference. When we idolize our preferences over unity, we become demanding and proud rather than selfless and forgiving. Embracing everyone, no matter what color, what status, what background they came from, was God's plan all along. Church, it doesn't matter who walks through those doors. It doesn't matter what they're wearing, if they're wearing shorts or a pair of flip-flops, whether they're wearing a V-neck shirt and skinny jeans, it doesn't matter. They're here for a reason, because God's called them here to make us one. So we need to embrace all, no matter what. Number two, we need to meet people. And when we talk about meeting people, the question that God is asking us is, will I meet people right where they are in life? That's a dangerous topic amongst a lot of Christians. Taking the message of Christ and God and Christ's love and goodness beyond the walls of the building. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a fear of safety or what. But we have an issue where we're taking the Bible to where people are, right where they're at. We have an issue. And it's not just this church, it's a church-wide issue. And when I mean church, not the building, the people. The church is not this building. That's the first step we need to understand. God doesn't call the church a building. He calls the church his people. John chapter 4, verses 11 through 13. Sir, said the woman, you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank from it himself, as did also his sons and his livestock? Jesus answered, everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again. Everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again. I know ever since I've stepped foot and became a member of this church and kind of like a key player, because I believe every single one of us are key players in God's kingdom. The message has been repetitive, and please forgive me if it sounds like a broken record. But we need to go and meet people instead of wait for them to come here and meet them. I was reading this blog by a guy named Andy Vaughn this week, and I hope I'm going to read a paragraph from him. And I hope this paragraph stings you as much as it stings me. He says, the church must leave the building. She must get out of the confines of the local tabernacle and get out and do what she's here to do. She was never intended to stay locked behind closed holy doors for potlucks and Bible studies only. She was designed to be a living and breathing entity that is so full of love, the world can't help but notice her radiant glory. Like an eagle that stays in the nest, she'll never reach the heights of her splendor until she steps out of the comfort of what she's always known. You, dear Christian, are the church. We are the church. We are the church. Got a question for you guys. I know we did this. I know this church has done this before. Maybe I'm overstepping my boundaries, but I'm going to say it anyway. Why haven't we started a home group outside of the walls within this church? Why? I know we've done it, and from what I've heard from many people, it was successful. Why did we stop? Is this building a safety net for everyone? Are we meeting new people? Are we inviting them into our homes? I think the question I really want to ask is, are we being intentional in going out and meeting them right where they are? Are we being intentional in doing that? Point 3, extending grace. And the question is, do I extend grace and mercy to people regardless of their lifestyles? We've talked about grace a little bit the past few weeks. And I think before we can extend grace to anyone, we need to learn to give grace to ourselves. We're our harshest critics. Pastor Dennis said this morning, and his demeanor and to the same token as my demeanor, I expect perfection out of myself. And when I fail to produce perfection, I beat myself up mentally. I don't allow grace to come in like God provided grace to me. I don't allow that. I think the first step in order to extend grace is we need to accept it ourselves. Because if we're able to extend it to ourselves, we know how to extend it to everyone else. How in the world can we extend grace to others when we're being hypocritical and fake? How can we do that if we're not willing to accept it ourselves? I created kind of like a small list for you guys. I forgot the Bible verse. That's the Bible verse from John chapter 4 where we're talking about extending grace. Go call your husband and come back. I have no husband, she replied. Jesus said, you're right when you say you have no husband. The fact is, you've had 5 husbands, and the man you now have is not your husband. What you have just said is quite true. So what are some practical ways to extend grace? Here's a list. Speak words intended to build, not tear down. And this goes to ourselves because, again, when I talk down to myself, ultimately I'm bringing myself down as well. As a Christian, there's going to be rough days. That's the truth. And I can promise you there are going to be rough days. There's going to be days where we don't want to see anyone. We don't want to deal with anyone. And then our mindset when we don't want to deal with anyone is we give them a cold shoulder. Or we probably say something that ultimately will tear them down. When we go out and extend grace to others, we want to encourage, not discourage. We want to encourage, not discourage. We want to freely forgive. And this is another one where we have to learn this ourselves. I think there's things in our past that we're not willing to forgive ourselves for. But yet, God has forgiven us. If people do things wrong to you, the Bible clearly says 70 times 7. We need to freely forgive people. We need to practice patience. And this is tough with a lot of people. In order to practice patience, we got to be around people. True. I believe patience is a gift from God. Because there's times where people drive us absolutely nuts. And you just want to, instead of, oh, walk away. Walk away for a second, take a deep breath, and come back. Swallow your pride and say, I'm sorry, and I was wrong. Some of us have pride issues, and some of us are not willing to admit when we're wrong. There's even times when we may be wrong, or we may be right. But sometimes we say, I'm sorry anyway. Because I'm sorry comes from the argument that you guys have had. I'm sorry for the argument that we had. Please forgive me. Don't keep score of what is fair. And this is holding grudges to other people. We have a tough time holding grudges. When we've been wrong, we hold it in. Sometimes we may let it slip. And we'll say, I forgive you. But then that person does something again that triggers that one thing that happened before. And instead of one thing, it's two things, and it just starts to avalanche. Don't keep score. Let it go and truly forgive them. Don't condemn or give up on people. There's a lot of broken people out there, and some of us believe they're never going to find Jesus, and we'll move on. Those are the ones we can't give up on. Because they're the ones who need Jesus just as much as we do. And then emphasize mercy, not justice. There goes an Amber alert, everyone. Emphasize mercy, not justice. Sometimes when people do us wrong, we want payback. We live in a vengeful society where if you've done me wrong, I promise you I'm going to get you back 10 times what you did to me. Emphasize mercy to people. And these are practical ways we can extend grace to everyone. 4, celebrate God. And the question that comes up is, do I celebrate God in life through a true spirit of worship? John chapter 4, verses 21 and 24. Woman, Jesus replied, believe me, a time is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You Samaritans worship what you do not know. We worship what we do. For salvation is from the Jews. Yet a time is coming and has now come when the true worshipers will worship the Father in the Spirit and in truth. For they are the kind of worshipers the Father seeks. Verse 24. God is Spirit, and His worshipers must worship in the Spirit and in truth. And as I look at this point, as I look at this celebrate God and this question, there's another question that I purposely battle myself. And here's that question. Maybe you guys are in the same boat as I am. Am I truly putting God first in my life over my own desires? Let me say that again. Am I truly putting God first in my life over my own desires? In order to celebrate God with a true spirit of worship, we've got to put God first in our lives. So the question comes, how can we make God the top priority in our how can we make our relationship with God our top priority? First, we need to take an honest look at our current priorities. We've got to take an honest look at our priorities. Here's some questions that we need to ask ourselves when it comes to our list of priorities. Where are we investing most of our time, money, and energy? Which relationships and activities do we devote to each and every day? Where do we currently place God on our priorities list? What changes do we need to make in order to place God at the top of this list? Where does God rank on the total pole in your life? The second one, and this one may hurt a little bit, and I'm going to have to explain it. Recognize where the stress of chaos begins. Who has stress in their lives? So 75%. All right, good. Let me explain. The more we try to make our life better by pursuing our own desires, the more our desires will spin out of control, creating stress and chaos in our lives. Let me give you a little bit of a practical example. There's a lot of people who like to partake in alcohol. Not just a tiny bit of alcohol, a lot of alcohol. Hey, it's good initially, but the next day it comes, it's a headache. Oh, that was a fun one. When we follow our own desires, it's good initially, but then we realize that, yes, while it was good initially, I'm well off the path. Following our own desires creates the stress in our lives, when in fact we need to sometimes just be still and ask God for guidance. The more we pursue a closer relationship with God above all else, the better we'll be able to distinguish between what is truly important and what's just merely urgent. Freeing ourselves up to receive more blessings God wants to send our way. How's your relationship with Christ? Are you following what you want? That's probably causing more stress in your life? Or are you following the path that God has laid out for us? And the third one is get involved. Get involved. The more we pray and we dig into God's Word, there's going to be more opportunities to get involved here at the local church level, or the local building level, I'll call it, but also our community. We can celebrate God by serving in ministries here throughout our church here. Maybe God is calling someone, well, I said it earlier, a home group, to lead a home group in their home. The church is not a once a week or an hour on Sundays. Where can you plug in? Lastly, share the good news. How do I live on mission and share the good news with my friends, family, co-workers, and community? Verses 28 through 30. Then, leaving her water jar, the woman went back to the town and said to the people, "Come, see a man who told me everything I ever did. Could this be the Messiah?" They came out of the town and made their way toward him. Now, if you jump ahead 9 verses to verse 39. They came back. I think the Samaritans from that town believed in him because of the woman's testimony. He told me everything I ever did. So when the Samaritans came to him, they urged him to stay with them, and he stayed 2 days. And because of his words, many more became believers. As a result of the Samaritan woman talking to the town, talking to her community about Christ and what he did personally for her, others went to him, and many more became believers. How do I live on a mission and share the good news? One of the things I struggle with, and I'm being honest and open with you guys, this idea of small church. I struggle with it. And I've heard it many, many, many times within the city here that we're okay with small church. And I get small church creates a community within a body of believers. I get it. But as Pastor Dennis says, quite frequently, I believe people who say they're okay with small church is an excuse to not go out and reach someone. And God forgive me if I'm completely wrong. We have 16,000 people within the city limits of Zephyr Hills. We have 40 churches. By my math, and I'm very analytical, That means a church average of 400. 400. And that's not counting the people that travel from Plant City, from Dade City, from Crystal Springs, from Wesley Chapel. I believe that there's something missing within this community. It's a willingness to share what God has done in our lives. And not only share it, but invite. Like I said, if I'm wrong, God, please forgive me right now. And maybe it's my own perception. But if we're okay with being where we are right now without anyone else coming through those doors, maybe I need to pray to God to pull me somewhere else. But I believe He's called us here because there's a need in Zephyr Hills. There's a need in Wesley Chapel. There's a need in Plant City. There's a need in Dade City. How are you sharing the good news with people, guys? I'm going to have you guys stand with me. And what I want you guys to do is close your eyes for a moment. And I like doing this at times. And here's what I want. And here's the rest of the prayer for this morning. Close your eyes and extend your arms out. Your palms facing the sky. Just extend them out. Father God, right now, I'm asking for forgiveness if I'm completely wrong. But I truly believe that the Great Commission in Matthew 28, verse 19, when you call us and you tell us to go and make disciples, it isn't just for churches to remain the same. It's for church to expand in a big body of believers. There are so many people within these walls or within the city limits that don't get an opportunity to hear this word. And I pray that changes. And right now, as we have our arms out, I pray that we receive a fire. God, I pray right now that you place a burden on our hearts, where you give us this extra oomph. And there may be some people here that, man, I'm doing so much for God right now. I don't know how much more I can take. The truth is, God, you don't give us more than we can't handle. But you're also wanting us to push down these walls and reach out to the community. As we have our arms out and extended right now, there's no place I'd rather be than right here, right now, receiving your word and your wisdom. Set a fire in our souls, God. As we sing this verse, I pray that that's your prayer this morning. That we discover ourselves in our relationship with God, and we take the step that we need to take to share the good news with people who don't know. Set a fire in us, God.